Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo. I'm joined here with Dave with his movie, How to Fill the Infillable Hole Inside You. Let's take a look at the clip. Dave, firstly, welcome to the New Filmmakers LA family, but thank you for coming all the way from New York to be here.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
I'm sorry about the weather, but I know.
I love the weather. It's awesome.
Good?
Yeah, it's great for me. I always, it's always a trip when I come to LA. It's always just so hot, so dry. This is a nice change of pace. It's nice. I can wear a sweatshirt. I had a coat on last night. It was wonderful.
It's a change, isn't it?
Yeah,
Definitely.
It feels like home.
Feels like home. Well, firstly, thank you for bringing your film. The wonderful thing is, I was just saying, our audience haven't seen anything quite like your film. We're talking so much at the festival about your film, but for those that haven't seen it, tell us a little bit about the story.
Yeah. So, it's an experimental short film. There's not not a clear narrative to it, but the film follows 4 different people. The thing they have in common is they're all going through some sort of moment of crisis, a moment of grief, having some kind of emotional episode. But instead of talking about what they're going through, or instead of having any dialogue in the film, they are just, in their own way, saying out loud ingredients. And then at the end of each kind of character's vignette, the credits roll, but instead of credits, it's the recipe for a dish that is built with those, that's made with those ingredients that they were talking about in the film.
It's a brilliant idea, I love a film that leaves you curious from start to finish, and I really was, and just the worlds that you took us into with these 4 characters, it was really kind of fascinating to watch, because I'm like, we have never seen this. It's so unique. Now, where did this kind of inspired idea articulate, and then sort of that journey from this idea and then turning it into a film?
I'm not the original kind of insight or the original kind of concept came. We were just coming out of COVID. And this is actually the first film I made.
It's insane.
And then,
I can't believe it.
So I knew I wanted to try something experimental to kind of relieve me of the pressures of having to, follow a narrative and, stay with continuity and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, in hindsight, I don't know if it was easier, if I made it easier for myself, but that was kind of the plan, to make something kind of experimental and kind of on my own terms with it.
Yeah.
And coming out of COVID, it was, talking to friends and watching the news and TV, there was just this feeling of needing some sort of catharsis and a feeling of both kind of sadness and rage and anger and frustration at things. Like, where did these last few years go? And so I wanted to, the idea came early of wanting to tell a story that didn't have any specifics to it. That I wanted people to watch it and be able to kind of plop themselves into these characters as almost kind of avatars for themselves.
Yeah. Weirdly enough, I felt that when you were taking us on the journey with these characters, and with each and every single new setup and new scene, I was almost like feeling their pain. It was like I was very empathetic experience watching this film, because I think, what's clever is you sort of had characters in there of maybe times in our lives when we could relate to that particular moment or experience, where maybe we felt that emotionally, but then you've given it through these characters, and then you've articulated it through these recipes, which is amazing. How was this experience working on your first film with actors, and then getting them to deliver these lines in this context with a different sense of emotion to the words they'd normally say, but through the context of these recipes? How was that process in working with your actors? I bet it was a little bit of fun doing it too.
It was super fun, because it was, first off, the production company I worked with called Keep or Destroy, absolutely amazing, and they did just such an amazing job casting this film. You know,
Great cast.
I mean, again, for my first film, you know, I had Sydney Lemon, who's been in Succession, in Tar.
Yeah.
She's on Broadway now with the play Job. Karen Karagulian, who's been in all of Sean Baker's films, most recently his Palme d'Or winning Honora. So really, like, you know, kudos to them for helping me out with an amazing cast. But yeah, it was fun. It was, you know, getting to meet all of them and getting to work with them was a pleasure and awesome. But then also the kind of challenge and kind of fun experiment of trying to give each character a backstory, not for the audience, because again, there's no context for what they're going through, but to give the actors something to kind of ground it in. And you know, it was interesting because some actors really took it and ran with it, and some were like, I actually have my own thing to draw from the well. Amazing. So I'm just going to go with that. Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, it was really an interesting, different way to do it. For my first film and first time working with actors as a director. Yeah. And to have it be such kind of a weird situation. Yeah. Where instead of like, you know, oh, here's the line I want you to say, and it has to do with this obvious thing, you know, with stakes or tension or anything. I was like, no, it's just, you need to scream potatoes.
But probably very fun as an actor to kind of, you know, because they still get to tap into the emotion, but they're obviously, you know, it's the context of their emotion that delivers the lines the way that it happens. So yeah, really, really clever. Now obviously at a few different locations here, like you're making your first film, you was outside in the opening scene, and then you obviously got, you know, you're inside. How was that process of production in your first film? How was that experience for you?
It was really awesome. I mean, I got to, you know, we used locations all around Brooklyn, basically. Yeah. The scene in the bar is like a bar that I go to all the time.
Oh, nice.
And my wife and my daughter, who I think she's 4 now, but at the time she was, I think, like 2.5. Okay. So they were like right outside the bar watching me work for a little bit. So that was fun. And then the first scene, the outside, that was like I forget what it's called. It's like a park, but it's also like a super fun site. Oh. Where it's like right on the cusp between Brooklyn and Queens. Okay. And there's a little waterway there that separates the two boroughs.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Like right outside the view of camera is like a giant just garbage dump.
Oh really? Yeah. Oh wow. So you cleverly put that into the screen as well.
And then the nighttime car scene was underneath a bridge, not far from the outside scene that we shot. That was actually the first thing we shot at night. And then the little kids scene was in just this little apartment somewhere in Bed-Stuy.
Oh, cool. That we filmed. So that was fun to play. Making your first film, looking back on this experience, what have you learned from making this project? Like, what was kind of stood out for you and what you've experienced?
I mean, so many things. Working with actors, you know, a big thing was trying to ride the line between how much coverage do I need to shoot for the edit to kind of keep myself safe, but then also how do I pull back from that and really stick to my vision as a director and filmmaker? You know, like, you know, I don't want to be one of those directors who gets to set or location and goes, we're just going to shoot aimlessly for 14 hours. You know, get the close-up, the medium, the wide, the over-the-shoulder, the da-da-da. It's like, no, we're going to, you know, there's a vision, there's a plan of attack. I need X, Y, and Z. We're going to get that right, and then we're going to move on.
Great.
And I think that actors and especially crew members appreciate that approach.
Absolutely. What have you kind of like, you know, you've made your first film. It's also amazing when it's in front of an audience and you get to experience it as like, oh, this is why I made a film. It's for audience to experience this whole. What has that journey been like? Just to have it in front of audiences. How has that been for you?
The biggest thing I learned from making this film, my first film, and the most important thing I think was learning that I like making films. Good. You know, the impetus to make the film at first was, you know, to find out, okay, what's it like to make it? Can I do this, and will I enjoy it, or will it be one of those things where it feels like I'm driving headfirst into a brick wall? Yeah. And it was all those things, but at the end result, I'm like, oh, I like doing this. And, you know, it was just, you know, so many years ever since I was a kid, just wanting to make films, but not really thinking that that's a viable opportunity for me. to do, and then finally saying, screw it, I'm just going to try and do it. So the biggest takeaway is, and for anybody who's trying to make a film who hasn't, my advice would be, just make one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you got the buzz now, and what's the experience been like sharing it in festivals and in the big screen? How's that been for you?
It's been awesome. I mean, seeing the film on screen with audiences and kind of seeing and hearing their honest reactions to it is so awesome. My favorite part, and it's consistent with every time it's been shown in every festival, the reaction is almost always the same. It's this kind of nervous laughter at first.
Yeah.
And it's this feeling of not, because it's a juxtaposition of like you're watching someone going through something so emotional and sometimes heartbreaking, and some of the subject matter or some of the kind of vague context in there it can be super dark.
Yeah.
But the concept itself is such a absurd notion that people laugh, and there's always this, the first reaction is always like people laughing, but then trying to cover up the laughter, not knowing if it's okay to laugh or if it's too serious to laugh. And then as it kind of keeps going and the recipes keep going, the laughter kind of comes a little bit easier. And so that is always a interesting thing to experience.
And I think it's amazing once you've now made it, you've done your first film, it's happened. What's next? What are you gonna next work on, Dave?
Next, I'm not sure. I mean, I have like a million ideas that I want to make, and as you know, I'm sure as well as everyone else knows, making films is super hard.
Yes.
It's expensive. It takes time, energy, all that kind of stuff. And so choosing the next project is always tough. Right now I'm in the process of I finished writing another short that I'm super excited to make. But I'm also in the process of like halfway through writing my first feature.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. And it's kind of a decision like, okay, do I shoot this next short that have this script for ready to go, or do I finish writing the feature and then make a short out of it as a proof of concept, or do I just go raise funds and try to make the feature and just go do that? So
it's nice you're in the middle. You don't know what comes first or what's going to come next,
right?
Which is quite fun.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing is about the first film that you've made, Dave, is that people in our festival were talking about it continually. They wanted to know more. They were curious where the journey that you'd led them on. So you're born to make films,
Thank you.
Because that's honestly, I think there's nothing a better compliment than people coming away from your experience to actually be talking about your film because they're like curious about it still. So you've got the buzz, but you've also got the talent and the skills. So, well, Dave, I hope you bring more movies to us. Please come back, and thank you again for coming from Brooklyn, New York, to be here as well. And thank you very much for your film.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Dave, everybody.